Well, business associations from across the continent as well as from the United States will be meeting during this year's Agoa Forum to unpack some of those opportunities, but also obstacles that stand in the way of businesses from the continent accessing those U.S. markets through Agoa. And to talk us through that, I am now joined by Advocate Mtho Xulu, who is with the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much for talking to us. Talk us through some of the discussions that the industry will be having around the opportunities to enhance those Agoa benefits for African businesses.
Well, thank you very much for having us. I think the angle that we are coming in on is the fact that we strongly believe that we have to protect the access that we have to the American market. We know it's a $25 trillion US market, which African goods and services and investment opportunities should not be left behind. So what we want to get involved in is to say, over and above the legislative instrument of Agoa, how do you have structured business relationships between organized business communities? Because obviously a lot of our members here may not necessarily have the ability to be able to access the market directly. It will need to crowd in a platform like the Chamber of Commerce for us to create a block in which we can represent the interests of South Africans into the US. And we're doing the same thing. Americans themselves may not necessarily have the access and the knowledge of opportunities that are in South Africa and suppliers that are here. So we're creating a seamless connection between organized business in South Africa and organized business in the US.
And we're also for the first time seeing Labour part of this year's Agoa Forum. Talk us through then the importance of seeing business and Labour work through some of those challenges, but also opportunities that are available in the US market.
So the driver of Agoa and our participation in the summit, but especially conversations this year, is the fact that growth in South Africa will depend on accessing bigger markets. We have a fairly small market now. We have to develop our own domestic market. But if you're going to talk about market access around the world, in essence, you want to also improve your productivity, and the work ethic of those who produce. So labor becomes a very important component of it, because the numbers that we want to grow, the number of goods that must be produced, ultimately must be produced by the labor component. So we have to have that relationship between commerce and labor, so that labor can buy in to the need to produce more for us to access this big market. Because obviously, if we are able to be competitive towards these bigger markets, it creates more jobs domestically. So the idea is that be competitive locally, have the best skills and the right commitment from labor, and let us be competitive in terms of accessing this big market. Because it will be worthless for us to negotiate for a bigger market and not be able to fill that demand. And that demand will come from the productivity of the labor force.
And Mtho, as we're having these conversations with the US stakeholders, how are we having those synergies with Chamber of Commerce and Industries associations on the continent to ensure that we are speaking the same language and we are, going towards the same goals?
Absolutely. I think, it's hosted in South Africa, but our participation is very clear that it remains the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act. It's about the African continent, and it comes now, obviously, with us trying to find better ways of making sure that the continental free trade area has a market. So we are obviously in relationships with our sister chambers, East Africa, West Africa, and obviously in SADC. And the idea is to strengthen the private sector capabilities in Africa through organized business, to make sure that we put together a single voice for the African goods. So the host is in South Africa. Most of the benefits actually flow to South Africa. But we are very mindful that this is an African opportunity, and we are actually strengthening the private sector offerings through organized business relationships.
So thank you so much for talking to us. Of course, that is Sacci's Advocate Mtho Xulu, just talking us through the Chamber of Commerce and Industry working with its peers across the continent and the United States to ensure that they have similar goals and meet those goals when it comes to harnessing new markets, specifically in the United States through Agoa. For Newzroom Afrika, I'm Ntokozo Khumalo in Sandton, Johannesburg.